Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Shunvatam swakata Krishna punya shavana kirtana hridayantah stohi badrani vidunoti suhrit satam. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Text 16. Mamstahi etat ascharyam sarvascharya achyute idam mayaya devya srijati avati hanti ajaha. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. O Brahmanas, do not think this to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The activities of the Lord are always inconceivable to the tiny brain of the living entities. Nothing is impossible for the Supreme Lord, but all his actions are wonderful for us, and thus he is always beyond the range of our conceivable limits. The Lord is all-powerful, all-perfect personality of Godhead. The Lord is 100% perfect, whereas others, namely Narayana, Brahma, Shiva, the demigods, and all other living beings, possess only different percentages of such perfection. No one is equal to or greater than him. He is unrivaled. Text 17. Brahma tejo vinirmukter atmajasya krishnaya prayana bimukam krishnam idamaha prata sati. So here it's again the translation. Thus saved from the radiation of the Brahmastra, Kunti, the chaste devotee of the Lord and her 5 sons, and Draupadi addressed Lord Krishna as he started for home. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kunti is described herein as Sati or chaste due to her unalloyed devotion to Lord Sri Krishna. Her mind will now be expressed in the following prayers for Lord Krishna. A chaste devotee of the Lord does not look to others, namely any other living being or demigod, even for deliverance from danger. That was all along the characteristic of the whole family of the Pandavas. They knew nothing except Krishna, and therefore the Lord was also always ready to help them in all respects and all circumstances. That is the transcendental nature of the Lord. He reciprocates the dependence of the devotee. One should not, therefore, look for help from imperfect living beings or demigods, but one should look for all help from Lord Krishna, who is competent to save his devotees. Such a chaste devotee also never asks for the Lord for help, but the Lord, out of his own accord, is always anxious to render it. Text 18. Kuntyo vacha namasye purusham tvadyam ishwaram prakritehe param alakshyam sarvabhutanam antarbahir avastitam. Srimati Kunti said, O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. Now we'll just give a short gist and then we can open up for questions. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, we live in Vrindavan. We're very fortunate. Our scriptures, our acharyas, they are of the opinion that the heart of the Premi Bhakta, the heart of the devotee who is experiencing Krishna Prema, is Vrindavan. Because Sri Krishna and Radharani, they never leave Vrindavan. And in the heart of the Premi Bhakta, they're always residing, and he is interacting and serving them in so many different ways. So as a consequence, it is said that the heart of a pure devotee, heart of a Premi Bhakta, one who has fallen in love with Krishna, is Vrindavan, because the entire Vrindavan is manifest in the heart of this devotee. And one of the qualities of Vrindavan is such that in Vrindavan, everybody is present. In other words, the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, the purport and the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam as being Krishna being the origin of every other incarnation is fully demonstrated, and it is very, very aptly, cohesively demonstrated by the residents of Vrindavan, which means that in Rajabhumi, if you come across a temple of Lord Ram, you will come across temples of Lord Varahadev, you will come across temples of Lord Narasimha, but there isn't a contradiction. There is no contradiction in the minds of the Vrajvasi that all the manifestations of Krishna, Lord Sri Ram, Lord Varaha, Lord Narasimha, these are all manifestations of Krishna. So it is always Radha and Krishna, and Sri Radha and Krishna manifest themselves as Lakshmi Narasimha. They manifest themselves as Sri Sita Ram. They manifest themselves as Sri Lakshmi Varaha. So basically, they manifest themselves in the different avatars because the origin is Krishna. That particular fact is very deeply ingrained in the heart of the Vrajvasi. How do they view the demigods? There is no contradiction in the heart of the Vrajvasi. They view demigods in relationship to Krishna, and also very seamlessly. There isn't a conflict. There isn't a disturbance when they view, the temple of Lord Shiva. Because here, for example, we live in Raman-Reti. There is Raman-Retishwar. If you go down a little further, there is Gopeshwar Mahadev, who is practically guarding the Vamsivat. And then there is Chakleshwar Mahadev in Govardhan. So there is no contradiction. Lord Shiva fully participates in the pastimes of the divine couple in Braja, fully. And the Vrajvasis practically embrace Lord Shiva as being a superlative Param Vaishnav, which is the conclusion of our Acharyas as well. There's a lot of interaction between the Vrajvasis and Lord Shiva is considered to be the Param Vaishnav. Here, he manifests his Rupa as a Gopi. Now, the point we are trying to make is Vrajabhumi is the origin of the entire realm of Vaikuntha. It is practically the origin of all the rasas that are found in different realms of Vaikuntha. If there is rasa, which is the relationship that is found in any realm of Vaikuntha, then that realm has its origin in Vrajabhumi as well, which means that rasa has its origin in Vrajabhumi. Now, what is very strange is that in this particular chapter 8, the Pandavas come into great disturbance on account of the aggression showed by Ashwatthama. He's so envious that he wants to practically annihilate the Pandavas. He goes even further, he wants to annihilate the unborn child, which is in the womb of Mother Uttara. And this enviousness is extraordinary. That is the amount of anger and envy which Ashwatthama has. And he practically wants to end the entire dynasty because he feels that they shouldn't exist. This is basically enviousness. They should not exist. Now, what is being described here in these verses is a very, very specific mood. There is a certain mood of dependence. The dependence of the Pandavas on Krishna. There is a dependence of the Pandavas on Krishna, and Krishna is reciprocating to that dependence by offering protection. Now, Srila Haridas Thakur, when in conversation with Lord Chaitanya, in the Harinam Chintamani, Lord Chaitanya wants Haridas Thakur to describe the qualities of a Vaishnava. Srila Haridas Thakur particularly mentions that the Vaishnava's quality is to depend fully on Harinam. Harinam is non-different from Krishna because Nama, Naminoho, Abhinnatum. There really isn't any difference between the Nama and the Nami because both are transcendental. When the pure devotee is chanting Harinam, when he is chanting Hare Krishna, Shri Radha and Shyam Sundar appear before the pure devotee in his heart. So whenever they chant Hare Krishna, the divine couple manifests, and then there's Leela, there's Rupa, there's Leela, there is Guna, everything is manifest from Harinam. So the point being that the true quality of a sadhu is to depend on Krishna, the true quality of a sadhu is to depend on Harinam. This is being spoken of by Srila Haridas Thakur. As a sadhaka, what is most important is you depend on Harinam, you depend on Krishna, and Nama Naminoho Abhinnatum. There really isn't what I would call as a distinction between the name and the name, so you're depending on Harinam. Now, this is basically found as a common theme, and this is also being displayed here in this particular chapter, that there is an encouragement of wanting the devotees to depend on the Lord exclusively because the Lord would engage in protecting the devotee from calamities. However, what is quite strange about Vrajabhumi, what is quite strange about the pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto in Vrindavan, is that there is a contradiction. In Vrindavan, the devotee actually thinks that Krishna is dependent on them. So it's a very big contradiction. So, for instance, the mood which is encouraged by Mahaprabhu, the mood that is encouraged by Srila Rupa Goswami, the mood that is encouraged by the Acharyas, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, is for us to basically think that the deity of Krishna is dependent on us. Because this is led by the Vrajavasis. When we use the word Vrajavasis, we are talking about Mother Yashoda, we are talking about the cowherd boys, we are talking about Srimati Radharani and her friends, we are talking about the dasas of Lord Krishna. So the point I'm trying to make is that the mood of understanding that Krishna is dependent on us is encouraged by our philosophy. It is encouraged by the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas. So it is quite strange. Outside of Vrajabhumi, that is displayed sparingly. Inside Vrajabhumi, that quality that this boy is dependent on us is very commonly displayed. It's a matter of rasa, it's a matter of exchange between the devotee and the object of love, which is Krishna. The Vishaya is object of love, which is Krishna, and there's an exchange which is happening here. And this exchange is so powerful that the Yogamaya potency, the internal potency of the Lord is so powerful that the potency practically brings about and unfolds prema in the heart of the devotee, where the devotee starts understanding that this boy, Krishna, is dependent on us. Because in Vrajabhumi, the mood displayed by Krishna is called Vishramba. He practically does not display a difference between himself and his devotees. He is on an either equal, or in some cases, he becomes subordinate. In the case of Mother Yashoda, he becomes subordinate. He practically receives love by becoming subordinate because that is appropriate. How do you receive love from your mother? By being her superior. You cannot be her superior of your mother to receive maternal love. You cannot be the superior of the father to receive paternal love. You need to be dependent. You need to be putting yourself in a position of wanting that rasa. Krishna is extraordinarily greedy for rasa in Braja. That is why the whole aspect of who Krishna is that he is superlative to Narayana. He is superlative to the demigods. He's superlative to the whole realm of Vaikuntha, which are all his expansions. Krishna has 64 qualities, whilst Lord Narayan has 60. The 4 extra qualities of Krishna, as described by our acharyas, there is Rupa Madhurya. He has an extraordinary beautiful form. And then there is Leela Madhurya. His pastimes are extraordinarily sweet and overpoweringly sweet. Then there is Venu Madhurya. It's only Krishna who stands in this crooked form of Tribhanga and he plays the murali, he plays the flute. It's only Krishna. Narayan would never do it. Lord Ram, you would not find him playing the flute. It's only Krishna. So there is Venu Madhurya, there is the sweetness of playing the flute that's found in Vraja, which is one of the 64 qualities of Krishna. And that quality makes him superior to Lord Narayan. And what is this Venu Madhurya? He practically captures the hearts of everyone. The Venu, which is the flute of Krishna, competes with other messengers such as the parrots of Vrinda Devi to convey messages to all the residents of Braja to come for the service of Krishna at appropriate times. So the Venu Madhurya is an extraordinary quality. When he actually plays the flute, he's practically conveying messages of encouraging people to come for service. And this particular Madhurya, the sweetness, overpowers the extraordinary transcendental Aishwarya and power and opulence and beauty and knowledge, which is displayed in the Vaikuntha realms by Narayana. Lord Narayana is subdued by the sweetness when Krishna manifests here. He's completely manifesting sweetness here. So there is Rupa Madhurya, which is his extraordinary form, which is bent in 3 places, which is basically Tribhanga. This is not found in displayed by any other avatar. This is extraordinary. His beauty is extraordinary. He is surrounded by extraordinary devotees, prema madhurya. Yeah, they are madly, madly in love with him. So there is an extraordinary nature of the devotees who surround the Lord, and there is prema madhurya. And then there is Venu madhurya, and then there is Leela madhurya. Leela madhurya is specifically focused on the extraordinary Damodar Leela. That's why the Damodar month, Kartik, we celebrate it with a great attention, and there's a lot of austerities performed by some devotees, and Vraja specifically is a favorite destination during Kartik. Now, during the month of Damodar, the Damodar Leela is considered to be one of the opulences and the Aishwarya of Krishna, which means Krishna practically is establishing his supremacy by Leela Madhurya. And the Leela Madhurya, particularly of his playing the pastime of a child in Gokul, is considered to be very special. So he is practically establishing his supremacy with that particular pastime. He is establishing his supremacy by standing in this extraordinary form of Tribhanga alongside Srimati Radharani and the other devotees in Braja. And this beauty which is being displayed by him is so extraordinary that it surpasses the beauty of Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. This is practically unlimited in an absolute way. Lord Narayan is absolute and he is unlimited too. But there's Aishwarya, there's an extraordinary opulence and of power. There's an extraordinary distance because of that power. You can never imagine yourself to be in proximity to Lord Narayan. You can only engage in dasya. This is the conclusion of our acharyas. You can only engage in dasya because you cannot really go near someone who is so powerful that he breathes in that their universes become unmanifest. He breathes out and universes become manifest. How do you go near such a personality and then, even try and, kind of approach him without formality? So there's extraordinary level of formality because there's a display of power. There's an extraordinary power which is being displayed. The conclusion of our acharyas, most specifically of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is the fact that every other religion that we see on the planet, at best, they can only come to the level of dasya. Every other religion can only come to the level of dasya. But here in Vraja, what's been given to us is so special that we have the ability to go from dasya to sakya to vatsalya, and all the way up to madhurya ras, which is the most extraordinary nature of prema found in the hearts of the devotees who surround Krishna, which is why one of the opulences of Krishna is considered to be prema madhurya, which is to be surrounded by extraordinary souls. Now we can imagine why Vaishnava Aparadh takes on such an important position in the minds of our acharyas. Why is Vaishnava Aparadh so dangerous? Is because if Krishna proclaims that I'm superior to Narayan because I'm surrounded by my devotees, imagine committing aparadh to the devotees. It's just madness. Yeah, it's a madness of a mundane kind. It's madness of a mundane kind. It really is. There's no hope for such a person who wants to commit Vaishnava Aparadh. Because Krishna is proclaiming that, this is my opulence. I'm superior to every other expansion because I'm surrounded by exalted devotees. So that's why there's such a warning being given by our acharyas in Nama Aparadh, saying the first aparadh that you ever do is Vaishnava Aparadh, and it will just slide down, and then there would be a material conception of life where we would start again developing mundane rasa. Instead of spiritual rasa, our rasa would become very mundane. Yeah, we would start getting attracted by mundane music. We would start getting attracted by mundane food. We will start getting attracted by mundane entertainment. We will start getting attracted by everything that is mundane. All of this is rasa, but it is perverted. And this perversion occurs even for devotees when they commit Vaishnava Aparadh. So it practically is an important aspect of who we are. We need to kind of constantly understand that Krishna practically thinks that he is very special. Imagine this. Krishna is saying, I'm very special because of my devotees. So how special are the devotees? It's hard to imagine the place given by Krishna to his devotees. So that's why this Vaishnava Aparadh becomes such an important consideration for all practitioners, especially if you are dependent on Nam, and Nam can remove every kind of aparadh. If there has been Seva Aparadh, Nam can absolve us of Seva Aparadh. If there have been Seva Aparadhs, in fact, if you have committed offenses while coming in touch with the deity, if you have committed offenses coming in touch with so many other aspects of divinity, then all of that can be absolved by Sri Nama. Nama is extraordinarily merciful. Nama Prabhu is extraordinarily merciful because he practically would absolve you of all kinds of karmic reactions and difficulties that have been imposed upon us because of previous offenses. But then, Nama Parad, there is no refuge. Where would you go if you commit Nama Parad? That's why Vaishnava Parad, which is listed as the first aparad, is extraordinarily powerful because it practically drags the rasa, the interest of the person of experiencing rasa and connection with Krishna, in wanting to come closer to Krishna and to Vrajabhumi and wanting to understand Krishna, that practically transforms itself and puts the person back into mundane rasa with aparad. Which is why the last offense is where even after hearing all these instructions on Nama Parad, one keeps committing Nama Parad. After hearing all these instructions on Nama and the glories of Nama, if one still has material conceptions and desires, that is the last offense. But how does the last offense happen? There is an order. The first offense has taken place. There is Vaishnava Parad. And as a consequence, the last offense also manifests itself. So the point being that in Vraja, Krishna is displaying his 64 qualities. He's practically superlative. And these 4 qualities are what we described just shortly. Now, these qualities are such that these qualities are very extraordinary to such an extent that the devotee who is in prema, in Vraja, does not think that Krishna is supposed to save me. He practically is in the conception that Krishna needs to be protected. Krishna is ours. There is absolutely no tinge of Aishwarya. There is no tinge of understanding that Krishna is supreme. There is no tinge of understanding that Krishna is Aishwarya Mai, because the sweetness of Krishna has covered over this entire conception in Vraja to such an extent that he is equal to the participants in Rasa. And if you do not have equality, or if you do not have an appropriate position, then there would not be a proper flow of love in that relationship. So Krishna and his potency, Sri Yogamaya, the internal potency, makes adjustments in the conceptions of qualified devotees so that they can understand him. So what is being seen in Vraja is that Mother Yashoda thinks, oh, I must feed him. He is hungry. Yeah, she has to run. Oh, I must feed him. He is hungry. He's going to break all the pots. He's going to cause great mayhem. He'll go and steal here. He will steal there. None of this has anything to do with divinity. This is all pure transcendental rasa. This is pure transcendental rasa. And this is very strange about Vrajabhumi, which is why this is the highest conception. And unless we hear with faith from our acharyas about Vrajabhumi, we will not be able to understand Krishna's pastimes in Vrajabhumi. The sweetness of the pastimes requires that it be heard from those who experience that sweetness. It's very important. That is why someone who has already been in Vrindavan had to carry the prema of Vrindavan and distribute it, which is what Srila Prabhupada did. Srila Prabhupada started from Radha Damodar Mandir here in Seva Kunj. He stayed there. He wrote the first 3 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he carried prema from Vraja and he distributed the prema around the world. So he had no confusion. Srila Prabhupada had no confusion when he stepped onto the shores of America. He had no confusion. Each and every person, every soul whom he saw on the streets of America, he knew that this devotee, this person, this soul belongs to Krishna. There was no misconception. There was no hesitation in giving Krishna consciousness. The hesitation in Krishna consciousness comes due to our faith. We have issues in understanding that Krishna consciousness is natural. As preachers, we have issues in understanding that Krishna consciousness is natural. Srila Prabhupada did not have that issue. Our acharyas did not have that issue. They had to proclaim Krishna consciousness because they knew this was the true religion. They knew that this is the dharma of the Atma. The Atma is seeking rasa. Krishna is Rasaraj. We have to connect him, and Nama is the means. Mahaprabhu is the Yuga avatar. So this is the Yuga Dharma. There is absolutely no confusion in the hearts of Srila Prabhupada. So he went to New York, and with very deep faith, he chanted on his kartals. He fed the devotees prasadam. He taught them how to be Vaishnavas in terms of external habits, also in terms of worship, also in terms of etiquette, and so on and so forth. And he practically started this movement with nothing. But why did this happen? How did this happen? Because there was no misconception in the heart of Srila Prabhupada. When he saw the jiva, he understood that jiva, you belong to my Lord. You have no other business. If there is a bona fide religion, if there is anything at all the jiva is supposed to do, the jiva is supposed to serve Krishna. You are supposed to serve Krishna. And my duty is to enable that. I'm supposed to give you the facility for you to be able to serve my master. This is the mission of Mahaprabhu. I'm representing my guru. So there was no misconception. There was no fear. There was no fear of rejection. There was no fear of any kind of doubt that this jiva who is in a different kind of body may not be able to accept something which has come all the way from India or Vrindavan. There was great clarity, and this clarity is seen in the writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because they all knew that the rasa which is being proclaimed from Vrindavan is practically the jiva. Every jiva on the planet has a right to it. There is no discrimination. This particular nama belongs to everyone. Every country, every jiva requires this nama, because every jiva, every country, and irrespective of what the external covering is and their social habits, their economic level, or their external nature, irrespective, the jiva's potency, jiva basically is supposed to serve Krishna. This particular conviction was carried, it was demonstrated by Srila Prabhupada. So this Brajabhumi is extraordinary. It can give the greatest amount of knowledge, which means that you can access Ayodhya from here. One would understand the mood of Sri Hanumanji while sitting in Vraja much better than if you were to sit elsewhere, because you will completely have a view which is completely uncluttered. It has a complete clean view of everything else. That is why Srimad Bhagavatam takes us from the first canto where Krishna is displaying his opulence. He is practically displaying his opulence of protection. You see, he stops the Brahmastra. The Brahmastra is considered to be the ultimate weapon. It is used to practically, restart the process of creation. Yeah. In the third canto, Lord Brahma, he is quite bewildered and he has to start the process of creation. And while he wants to start the process of creation, he is sitting on his lotus and he is seeing that the entire lotus that he is sitting on, along with the different manifestations of the petals and the stalk and so on, they're all being turbulently moved by the extraordinary winds and the waters of dissolution. Because it is just after the dissolution, it is just after Pralaya that Lord Brahma is manifesting from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So he is practically witnessing the end of creation happening before he can begin his creation. But how do you start something when something is ending? So he then uses his potency practically to bring things back under control. That's the potency of the Brahmastra. Okay, that is the potency of the Brahmastra. So it is no ordinary thing. It is no ordinary thing to be wielding the Brahmastra and to practically put a stop to the Brahmastra if it's being directed towards a living entity. And a human being, for all practical purposes, is nothing. In the grand scheme of things, nothing. So Krishna stopping the Brahmastra is no big deal. It is not a big deal at all. It is not a big deal, because the expansions of the expansions of the expansions are practically lying on the causal water, and they are practically inhaling and unmanifesting the creation. They're exhaling and then they are manifesting the creation. All these facts are being drilled into our head from the first canto through the ninth canto. The ninth canto, we also notice the pastime of Lord Sri Ram. We notice the pastime of Lord Sri Ram, who again is Krishna coming in a human form. But then in this particular pastime, he is Maryada Purushottama. He is Maryada Purushottama. As Krishna, he is Leela Purushottama. Leela Purushottama, where the Leela Madhurya, the sweetness of his Leela is so special that it enthralls and puts him in a very special place amongst the Vaikuntha planets. Yeah. Now, that same Krishna is appearing as Lord Sri Ram in the ninth canto. And here, he is going to establish Maryada. He's Maryada Purushottama, where he's establishing etiquette, he is establishing the rules and regulations, and he is ready to put himself through all kinds of challenges. Now, he comes in a human form as well, Lord Sri Ram in the ninth canto. What is so extraordinary about Lord Sri Ram? There's a similarity of Lord Sri Ram to Vraja to some extent. What is the similarity? It appears as if Lord Ram was dependent on the Vanaras. He was dependent on the monkeys. It appears as if Lord Ram was dependent on the different personalities who assisted him. Yeah. If you read Sri Ramayana, you'll get the impression that Lord Ram was actually dependent on all of those. This is extraordinary. And if you do not understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, if we do not get educated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we would even start thinking that Lord Ram was dependent. Was he dependent? The answer is no. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is practically the personality of Godhead who practically can manifest anything. Because after the realm of Krishna's pastimes, it is Ramayana. It is practically Lord Ram's pastimes which are considered to be most prominent. He is Maryada Purushottama. Is he dependent on the devotees who came along and to lay out the bridge between India and Sri Lanka to kill Ravana? Is he dependent on the Vanaras? The answer is no. Then why did Lord Ram manifest such a pastime? Why did he manifest such a pastime of wanting to take help from so many devotees? This is again Leela. This is practically rasa. There's a certain exchange of rasa. The rasa in Ramayana is Dasyaras. The extraordinary rasa in Ramayana is Dasyaras. You see, you cannot really approach Lord Ram because he's an emperor. He's a king. There's extraordinary maryada. There are strictures, there are edicts, there are vidhi. You can't really approach him as you would the son of Yashoda Maya. You can't. You have to keep some distance because he's a king. So what is it that you can do for Lord Sri Ram? You can become a das or a dasi. You can be an extraordinary servant. You can offer dasya bhakti. That was exemplified by Lakshman. That was exemplified by Sri Hanumanji. Both these personalities exemplified Dasya Bhakti to such an extent that it is unparalleled. It is unparalleled. And Lord Ram's pastime of actually displaying dependence on his devotees was to invoke and experience this Dasya Bhakti. Our acharyas are also of the opinion that when the Lord appeared as Narasimhadev and he saved Prahlad Maharaj, rather, Lord appeared from Prahlad Maharaj's heart into the pillar. You see, Lord Narasimhadev was already present in Prahlad Maharaj's heart. When Hiranyakashipu challenged Prahlad Maharaj to show him the manifestation of Lord Narasimhadev from the pillar, the Lord appeared from the pillar because he went from the heart of Prahlad Maharaj and he manifested externally. Because where else would he be other than the heart of his pure devotee? So he was sitting in the heart, he came out and then manifested himself from the pillar. So the point is that when the Lord appeared as Narasimhadev, he had a very paternal attitude towards Prahlad Maharaj. He had this attitude of wanting to save Prahlad Maharaj. He practically picked up Prahlad Maharaj after annihilating Hiranyakashipu. He placed Prahlad Maharaj on his lap, and then he did something quite extraordinary. He sat on the throne of Hiranyakashipu. No other incarnation has occupied the throne of the Asura whom they killed. No one else has. But the Lord practically occupied the throne of Hiranyakashipu. He pulled Prahlad Maharaj, made him sit on his lap, and then he had this extraordinary exchange of rasa, which was paternal, which is basically found in the Vaikuntha realm. It is paternal. What else could you do other than be, dependent to Lord Narasimhadev? You can't really imagine Lord Narasimhadev is dependent on you. So Prahlad Maharaj sat on the lap of Narasimhadev, and Narasimhadev looked at him and then was wondering, what is it which my bhakta is experiencing? He is sitting on my lap as someone who is being protected. He's sitting on my lap as a son would sit on the lap of a father. What is he experiencing? So this desire for rasa starts with Narasimhadev. Then Lord Ram appears after Narasimhadev, and here he plays the role of a son. You see, he wants to experience paternal love because the Lord becomes curious. And then from there, it is Krishna, you see, basically where he experiences all the rasas because he's the origin. Yeah. The point being that Ramayana is practically exemplifying Dasya Bhakti. It is just rasa which is flowing in all the incarnations of the Lord and all the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. One should identify rasa because there is a certain rasa, there's a relationship that's flowing in all the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the culmination is the 10th canto where we all come to the conclusion that the origin of all rasas is Vrindavan. The origin of all rasas is Brajabhumi. The origin of all rasas is Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar. We come to this conclusion that they are the origin, they are the avatari. But then there is an understanding of the flow of love between the devotee and the devoted. Basically the flow of love between the object of love and one who is depositing this love. That is being displayed throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, which prepares us ultimately to reach conclusions of the sweetness of Rajabhumi. So what we are seeing in this chapter is Aishwarya. This is Aishwarya. The prayers that are being offered by Mother Kunti is fully in awe and reverence. These are all in awe and reverence. This is dependence in awe and reverence. In Vrajabhumi, the extraordinary nature is that the dependence of Krishna is more evident than the dependence of the devotee. Krishna is more dependent. Yeah, he is more dependent. Yeah, he appears to be more dependent. At least that is how he enjoys rasa. He practically makes everyone think that he is dependent. All the cowherd boys, their mothers, everyone, they all cook thinking of Krishna. They're practically bringing things for him, thinking he must be hungry. Mother Yashoda is telling Balaram, Balaram, please take care of him. He is a young child, he needs protection. There seem to be so many attacks on him. There's so much enviousness. Balaram, please protect my son. This is Mother Yashoda's plea because she thinks Krishna is dependent on her. This is Vrajabhumi. This is the extraordinary nature of what we have been given by Srila Prabhupada. And this is so special because this particular aspect is not found in any other realm. The devotees of Ramayana in Dasya Bhakti are fully cognizant that they are not basically independent. They are fully cognizant that if they are winning, it's because of Lord Ram's name. Ram Nam has a very, very significant potency. The potency of Lord Ram and his name is such that one who chants the name of Lord Ram will understand the maryada of every circumstance they come across in their life, which means what is the specific dharma that is to be adopted in each and every circumstance in life would be fully manifest in the heart of a devotee who is chanting Lord Ram's names, because he is the Maryada Purushottama. He is the Maryada Purushottama. Now, this Maryada Purushottama put a lot of strictures, but he practically wanted to experience Dasya Bhakti. He practically invoked extreme Dasya Bhakti to the highest order, where if you want to really read Dasya Bhakti, you should read Ramayana. But why should the Gaudiya Vaishnava read Dasya Bhakti? Yeah, even though we are called Das and Dasi, why should we read Dasya Bhakti? Because Dasya Bhakti prepares us to approach Mahaprabhu. Dasya Bhakti is required for us to understand Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is Prema Purushottama. Krishna is Leela Purushottama. Lord Ram is Maryada Purushottama. Mahaprabhu is Prema Purushottama. He's distributing Prema unlimitedly throughout the entire creation. Mahaprabhu is Prema Purushottama. But how do you approach Mahaprabhu? He was extraordinarily strict as a sannyasi. He was extraordinarily strict in his manifestation of his pastimes on the realm when he was distributing Prema. As a sannyasi, he was very strict. You cannot approach Mahaprabhu on an equal basis. Can we really approach him in Vishramba as you would approach Krishna in Vrajabhumi? The answer is no. You cannot. You cannot approach him in Vishramba. You can approach him in Dasya Bhakti. Even Lord Nityananda, he was instructed by Lord Chaitanya, go spread my name. But then Lord Nityananda saw in his younger brother, Lord Ram. He was able to see Lord Ram when Lord Chaitanya was ordering him. That is why he took the mood of Lakshman and he went to distribute Harinam. Because this whole mood of Dasya Bhakti starts with Lord Nityananda assuming that particular mood. He went and distributed Harinam and he practically introduced Harinam as a gift from his master. He went and fell at the feet of each and every respondent and every resident of Navadvip in Bengal. And he actually requested them, please chant Harinam. This is the desire of my master. But why would Lord Nityananda, who is the older brother, who was actually given the honor of Vyasa Puja by Lord Chaitanya, take on this mood? Because he saw that this was Lord Ram also. So he wanted to basically display Dasya Bhakti. He went as a Das along with Haridas Thakur and distributed Harinam in all parts of the Bengal and Gauda Desha, Orissa and Bengal. Now the same mood of Lord Nityananda is being carried by our acharyas of wanting to distribute Lord Chaitanya's gift of prema throughout the world. But how do we approach this? We need to approach this in the same mode of Dasya. We need to be very strict when approaching Lord Chaitanya. He was very strict. So that's why our Gurujans, our Acharyas, our Guru Varga, they were very, very strict with the Maryada of interacting with material nature. They were very strict. There was no looseness displayed by anybody in a line in dealing with material nature. They were all very strict with the daily practices. They were fully accomplished and they had already attained the perfection of prema They were already serving the divine couple in the realm of Vrindavan. The pastimes of the divine couple were already manifest to them, and they were entering into those pastimes in their original spiritual bodies, and they were engaging in prema, and they were serving Srimati Radharani and Krishna directly. However, for the purpose of dealing with material energy, they were very, very strict. They practically displayed the dasya bhakti that is required to Lord Chaitanya. That is why this dasa dasanu das, because you can't really have dasa dasanu das when Krishna is treating you as an equal. So in Vrajabhumi, you can't develop that. But Lord Chaitanya, you need to be dasa dasanu das for you to understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. That is why this whole concept of dasa dasanu das comes, and this is particularly inspired by Lord Ram and his pastimes, which is the 9th canto. And then we come into the 10th canto. The Shadbhuja Rupa of Lord Chaitanya, Lord, the Shadbhuja Rupa is displayed to many devotees. It is displayed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. It was displayed to Vrindavan Das Thakur. Lord Nityananda saw the Shadbhuja Rupa, but in different sequences, which is also seen in the the first Leela of Parishad, the first part of Chaitanya Chaitamrita. So this particular aspect of manifesting Maryada in approaching Lord Chaitanya, engaging in very strict observance of vows, externally being very strict with our vows, which means that you deal with material nature with great strictness. You don't really allow any looseness in our transactions with material nature, understanding the great danger that is prevalent in the material nature. And then executing our bhakti, just as our acharyas did, very strictly. This is basically what was demonstrated by the Goswamis of Vrindavan. This was demonstrated by the other, disciplic succession who followed, that they were very strict in dealing with material energy. But that is required to approach Mahaprabhu. And this is displayed in the Ramayana, in Dasya Bhakti. So the code of honor of Maryada is displayed in Dasya Bhakti in Ramayana. Then you approach Mahaprabhu. And then when we serve Mahaprabhu, by the mercy of Mahaprabhu, we come in touch with Krishna. We come in touch with the eternal realm of Raja in Rajabhumi, and we are able to serve. And that particular aspect is more bewildering than anything else, because here Krishna says, you're my equal. Here Krishna says in Rajabhumi that the devotee is his equal. He practically hides all his opulences, his Yogamaya potency, practically subdues everything. And then Krishna practically is considered an equal by the participants of Braja, where the rasa is flowing unrestrictedly. But how do you prepare for all of this? All of this is prepared by taking cues from how the behavior set by the devotees of the different incarnations in Srimad Bhagavatam, as we notice from the first canto right through the 9th canto. There are certain displays of rasa, there's a certain level of faith, there's a certain level of determination. Yeah. So you have the Dhruva Charita, you have the Prahalad Charita. Why is there a need for those who are in Gaudiya Vaishnavism to study Dhruva Charita and Prahalad Charita? Is because there's great determination displayed in Dhruva Charita. There's great faith displayed in Prahalad Charita. Mahaprabhu used to listen throughout the day from Sri Gadadhar Pandit. He used to listen to Dhruva Charita and Prahalad Charita from Gadadhar Pandit. During the evenings, he used to associate with Swarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Raya Prabhu to discuss very confidential matters. So this was not done openly. Confidential was kept confidential. Openly, what was required for other devotees was given. So there was a lot of maryada, there was a lot of what I would call as rules and regulations in the way Mahaprabhu interacted with the world. And that particular aspect was also followed by acharyas. So what we are trying to say here is that the dependence that is being displayed in these verses are in reality Aishwaryamayi. And it is practically required for the devotee to move forward in Krishna consciousness. But at the same time, we need to be cognizant that as we develop an attraction for Vrajabhumi, and then the manifestation of pastimes of Vrajabhumi start coming into our heart, then at that point in time, what is extraordinary is that the dependence practically changes from us being dependent on Krishna to Krishna being dependent on us. And this is how our acharyas encouraged us to also understand. So we want to understand that Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is not dependent on us. He can manifest his particular pastime of distributing Harinam throughout the world by his single desire. He is not dependent on us. However, because we are encouraged by our Gurujanas, and we are encouraged by the fact that we are worshipping Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar, we want to think that Krishna is dependent on us. So we do things in our movement as if Krishna is dependent on us, but also with the understanding that we are dependent on him. This is a very tricky, subtle understanding. However, this is the understanding which is expected of us. We need to come to an understanding of the fact that we are dependent on Krishna, but then the movement is dependent on us. This is basically the understanding of a Vrajavasi. Yeah? We practically know at some level that we are completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. But we also need at every level to endeavor as if things are dependent on us. So we make all kinds of effort as if things are dependent on us, but also having this particular understanding that we are actually dependent on Krishna. So the dependence that is being displayed here amongst the devotees of Krishna and himself is a very complex arrangement. The dependence displayed by Lord Ram and his devotees is a very complex arrangement. So is the case with the dependence displayed by Srila Prabhupada with his disciples. Srila Prabhupada was not dependent on anybody. He wasn't. He could have easily done what was required. This may seem a little incredulous, but just try and understand that this is a pure devotee. He is fully carrying the potency of Vraja in his heart. He is empowered by Krishna. He carries Shakti. Now, why did he require help? He doesn't. But he practically gave an opportunity of service. So this is an opportunity of service that was given to the hundreds and hundreds of devotees who came forward eagerly to serve him so that they could advance. And the same opportunity of service is being extended to us. Srila Prabhupada is not dependent on us. We are dependent on him. But he has given us this opportunity. He has practically given us this opportunity. And this is our rasa, as this is our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. The more sincerely and the more honestly we serve him, greater would be his reciprocation of mercy. Greater would be our understanding of what he expects us to do. Greater would be our appreciation of what is being offered. And everything is dependent on his mercy. So in that sense, we want to act in our movement as if this movement is dependent on us. This is very important. But at the same time, we also need to know through scripture that we are completely dependent on Krishna. So this is the balance that we need to strike. And this balance is struck through sadhana. As we become more and more serious with the chanting of Harinam, and we become more and more serious with the deity worship and every other aspect and coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, we will then have the ability to strike this balance, because this balance is a gift. This balance is a gift. The extraordinary seriousness of being able to engage in service as if things depend on us, whilst also keeping in mind that everything is dependent on Krishna. This particular balance is a balance of faith. And that faith comes through coming in touch with Harinam. It comes through coming in touch with Bhagavatam. It comes through coming in touch with the deity. Most importantly, insulate ourselves with prasadam. Because if there is any activity that we do on a daily basis, several times, it's eating. If we can't ensure that the quality of prasadam that goes into our body is of a very high nature, which means it's prepared well, it's offered well, then we are in some ways weakening our immune system at different levels. So please ensure that prasadam is given a massive priority in your daily routine. Do not compromise on prasadam, because your chanting is dependent on prasadam. Your chanting is completely dependent on prasadam. In fact, everything is dependent on prasadam, which is quite extraordinary. Yeah, but it is the truth, because what you ingest as prasadam practically is required for us to experience what is required in terms of faith, in terms of coming in touch with Nam. For the holy names to dance, there has to be prasadam. So this is also a very important feature. So in summary, I was just wanting to say that we are very fortunate to have come in touch with Srila Prabhupada. He is wanting to use us in so many wonderful ways. He is not dependent on us. We are completely dependent on him for all kinds of mercy. However, we would need to understand how to operate with the mood of Krishna depending on us, whilst we are also engaging with the mood that we are dependent on Krishna. It's an interplay. So I think that was very important for me to share from the perspective of these these verses. So I'll stop here, and perhaps if there's time, I can take some questions.
Thank you for a wonderful class, Srivrindavan Prabhu. Really some really key points to take away. Amazing as usual. Thank you again. I would encourage everyone. I think, yeah, when I say everyone to ask questions. You can send me questions via chat. If you want to remain anonymous, that's okay. Please use this opportunity again to ask questions. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful points again. It's just very inspiring and very insightful, which is really very useful for sadhakas. I have a question about this. You spoke earlier about offenses, and the first offense being offenses towards devotees. Now, a lot of devotees nowadays in the mission of Srila Prabhupada live in Grahastha households, and in those Grahastha households, sometimes we have this issue. We find an issue where the parents, even though they know that, for example, family members have taken initiation in the Hare Krishna movement and are trying to do some service, unfortunately, consciously or sometimes consciously and sometimes even unconsciously, offenses are made towards those people who have taken initiation, and see it as an oversight rather than look for any kind of consideration around having a discussion about what could have been done differently, maybe. But how should that be taken by, how should that be considered? Because if these offenses are done, then there may be reactions as well to those family members.
Sure. See, the first point is we can actually take cue from the behavior of the lordships when they manifest very human pastimes, and that is Krishna and Lord Ram. And what is being manifested is that they dealt with society based on strictures of society. So if there are people who are older, if there are brahmanas, if they're well-read people, or if they are in a position of higher ashrams, for example, if they are sannyasis, which is a higher ashram compared to the grahastha or the brahmachari, then you need to accord respect according to the scriptural injunctions in terms of how to deal with them. So they basically followed the scriptural edicts while dealing with society, even though they had no reason to be respectful. They had no reason to be giving respect, because even in one of these verses, you will notice that Srila Vyasadeva and the other brahmanas, and Maharaj Yudhishthira, they practically worshipped Krishna as he was leaving. So there really wasn't any necessity for Krishna to reciprocate in any other manner other than receive worship. But then you notice that he's reciprocating, and he is actually according the respect that is given to Srila Vyasadeva, to the other brahmanas, etc., because they are, from a societal perspective, what we call as a superior position, societal position. So what I'm trying to say is, as devotees, we need to be sensitive to the point that if you have older relatives, give them respect, because they can't see anything but the fact that we are younger to them. So give them the respect they deserve. They've raised us, they have invested time, they've invested energy. So when we do that respectfully, then we have done our part. We do not need to basically make any other adjustment other than treating them nicely, because then that will automatically evoke a nice reciprocation. There is no need to judge them on any other aspect. And try as much as possible to basically involve them in Krishna consciousness in a very palatable way, as in giving them prasadam, inviting them for kirtan. These are very palatable aspects of Krishna consciousness. There is no imposition of rules. It is all fun activity. People are wanting to come and then mix with others, eat, and then also listen to very good kirtan. and dance. So inviting them to festivals. So basically what I am suggesting is that there needs to be an adjustment made by the devotee, which is based on what is normally accepted by Shastra and society. This is very important because we are interacting with society on their terms. We need to be very careful. Now, unless it becomes abusive where they can't really practice Krishna consciousness, there isn't much need for us to completely give up relationships. You can always keep in touch with relationships and invite them, take them around, give them prasadam, because who else can give them help other than us? Then introduce them to other senior Vaishnavas in some way or the other. In most cases, it works out. In some cases, there are challenges, but we don't need to be judgmental. We can simply offer them the respect they deserve based on societal norms, is what I would take up first. I hope this addresses your question. The point of offenses is such that it is not an offense unless they are fully cognizant of the consequences. Yeah, it is basically a circumstance where they're dealing with someone due to familiarity. So a father deals with the son due to familiarity. The son could be initiated. The son could be a Brahmana who is second initiated and has spent 20 years in the movement. But then for the father, it is the son. Yeah. So the mother, it is the son. So in that sense, we don't need to basically have any kind of what I would call as judgment beyond that. So I hope that addresses your question, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's wonderful. That's really, really insightful and really useful. Thank you very much, Krishna.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I think there's a question on the chat window.
I can see it. Yes, I'll just address it. I'm just wanting to read it first. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question is about the point you made that without prasadam, Krishna will not dance. What happens on Nirjala Ekadashi, please? Does Krishna dance because the bhoga has been offered, even though we haven't honored the prasadam yet? Well, the point being that Krishna's dancing on our tongue is what I was talking about. Our tongue needs to be purified. Seva unmukhehi jihva adav. Jihva is the tongue. Adav means first. So seva has to start from the jihva, from the tongue. So what kind of seva can you do with the tongue? The first thing is you will honor Krishna prasadam so that the tongue is purified. And then you will chant Harinam so that Nama will take on the rupa of Krishna and will dance on our tongue. But how can you invite Krishna to dance on our tongue, which is not purified by honoring Krishna prasadam? So there's a layer of Krishna prasadam. So that's the point I was trying to convey, is that our tongue needs to be purified by coming in touch with Krishna prasadam. Then Harinam will dance on our tongue. So this is extraordinarily important. On the performance of Ekadashi, for example, in Vrindavan, on Ekadashi days, the deities are given full bhoga, which means Krishna is fed shamsuously. He's not compromised in any way. The devotees honor that offered bhoga the next day as Dwadashi Prasadam. They accept it as Dwadashi Prasadam. So the rules and regulations of Ekadasi are for us. It is not for him. I was purely referring to the fact that our tongue needs to come in touch with Krishna Prasadam for Harinam to be felt. And if that was the whole point I was trying to convey, I hope this clarifies. Now, I have another question. Is Lord Ramachandra an incarnation of Krishna or Vishnu? Vishnu is a tattva. Vishnu is a tattva. So Krishna is also Vishnu tattva. Lord Rama is Vishnu tattva. And Vishnu tattva is distinguished from Vishnu tattva to Shiva tattva, Devi tattva, Shakti tattva, Jiva tattva. These are principles of potency. These are principles of energies and separated aspects of Krishna. Now, is Lord Ram and what we would call as, is he an incarnation of Krishna? Krishna is the avatari. He is the avatari. So we don't need to really look into see how Lord Ram is manifesting. He is directly manifesting from Krishna. See, Lord Ram's level, Lord Varaha, Lord Narasimha, these are all the same level as Narayana. The other incarnations are different. These three incarnations, Lord Narasimha, Lord Varaha, Lord Rama, they are all Narayana. But who is Narayana? Narayana is an Aishwaryamayi, an opulent representation of Krishna. So there's no difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Narayan. And Lord Narasimha, Lord Rama, and Lord Varaha are manifestations of Lord Narayan. But Lord Narayan is an Aishwaryamayi representation of Krishna, where Krishna is displaying his opulence, his power, his unlimited absolute power. Is just absolute at an unlimited power that is being displayed by Lord Narayan. And these three incarnations are manifestations of that Aishwarya. Lord Ram's Aishwarya, he practically displayed his power as a king. Lord Narasimha, needless to say, displayed Aishwarya, the opulence of extreme power and strength. Lord Varaha did the same thing. So the point is that these are all avatars who have their origin in Krishna. From Krishna, it's Balaram. From Balaram, it is Mahasankarshana. From Mahasankarshana, it is Karanodakashayi, Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi, Vishnu, Shirodakashayi, Vishnu. The manifestation of the avatars come from Shirodakashayi, Vishnu, but the potency carried can vary. So you can have Lord Narayana himself come, and you can have a somewhat subdued potency also being coming as an avatar. So our acharyas say that Lord Narasimha, Lord Varaha, and Lord Rama are all the same level as Narayana. So there's no difference. So you can say that he is incarnated from Krishna. So, okay, so is there any other question?
Krishna Prabhu, I have a question. It's about Lord Shiva, really. So we consider, as per the scriptures, Lord Shiva to the greatest Vaishnava. What about Shaivism? I'm not sure if I have pronounced it correctly. So how do they kind of reconcile this fact? Because they consider Lord Shiva as the supreme entity. Do they believe that he's the supreme Vaishnava? If not, how do they see it, and where do they derive that Lord Shiva is the supreme entity? Thank you.
See, sure. See, there are Srila Vyasadeva, who is an empowered incarnation of Lord Narayan. Otherwise, he would not have been able to do what he did with Srimad Bhagavatam. He would not have been able to do what he did with the Puranas, the Vedas. He is Narayan himself, Srila Vyasadeva, literary incarnation. Now, Srila Vyasadeva understood the fact that there are different levels of consciousness. And for different levels of consciousness, they would be attracted to different personalities. They would be attracted to different modes of nature. They would be attracted to different kinds of worship. They would be attracted to different levels of interaction with Krishna. So as a consequence, he wrote Puranas. He wrote the Skanda Purana. He wrote the Linga Purana. He wrote the Shiva Purana, Shiva Mahapurana. Yeah. He wrote, different Puranas were manifest. And then all these Puranas basically dealt with different levels of consciousness. And in every Purana, the personality who is particularly being glorified is considered to be supreme. So does it mean that they are contradicting the conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam? The answer is no, they are not contradicting the conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam, because in one sense, the opulence of Krishna in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, for example, that I'm Kartikeya amongst the warriors. He says, I'm Aditya, among the Adityas, I'm Surya, I'm Vivaswan. So he practically says that I am all that you see that is very opulent. But Srila Vyasadeva particularly created this division based on consciousness. But how do you approach a certain personality based on your consciousness if you don't think that they're supreme? Let's say you write Shiva Mahapuran, because there are definitely devotees who are completely attached to Lord Shiva. How do you inspire them if you were to give them information in Shiva Mahapuran that yes, you can worship Lord Shiva, but he is not supreme? You can't inspire them. So the idea is that for them, Lord Shiva is supreme, because that's where their faith is. Lord Shiva, if he notices that they're very sincere, he would give them Krishna consciousness. Lord Shiva, if he notices that the devotees who worship him are very sincere, he will introduce Krishna consciousness to them. He will put them in touch with Mahaprabhu's Leela. He will put them in touch with the devotees of the Lord so that they could experience Krishna consciousness. I've seen this over and over again. So whoever is very sincere in worshipping even the demigods, they are fully aware, the demigods are fully aware that the Yuga Dharma is Harinam. Those who are very sincere in worshipping even the demigods, they get an opportunity to come into Krishna consciousness because the demigods encourage them. They tell them, or rather inspire them and put them in touch with devotees indirectly. I'm talking about blessing them so that they somehow or the other come in touch. It's like meeting someone who is very powerful, and then they are practically putting the other person in touch with Krishna consciousness. So there isn't a contradiction ultimately, because we are trying to deal with consciousness and we're wanting to bring consciousness to the highest level. There isn't a contradiction. However, what has been written is for consumption of those who have deep faith in Lord Shiva. There, you can't proclaim that Shiva is a demigod. You have to proclaim that Shiva is supreme. And that is how the Puranas have been written by Srila Vyasadeva. Otherwise, you can't give faith. Now, what is interesting is that the Sandarbhas of Srila Jiva Goswami, what is interesting is that we will find a lot of quotations from Skanda Purana. You will find a lot of quotations from the other Puranas, even though the glorification of the demigod is being done in that Purana. Srila Jiva Goswami has very clearly taken many quotations to prove that even those Puranas, they establish Krishna as the supreme. So you can find that in the Sandarbhas. So I hope this makes sense. It is like introducing and bringing someone to a position of faith, and then slowly encouraging them with good habits. And then once they become very sincere, then whomever they are worshipping, who is well aware that Krishna consciousness is supreme and Mahaprabhu's movement is reigning supreme, would introduce them to the movement. This is a very natural system of faith that's been introduced to us.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful reply. Yes, that's really good. Thank you. Prabhu, someone's asking me if the class will be shared on Facebook.
It's actually on SoundCloud. It would be on my channel on SoundCloud. You can just, if you must have access to the channel link. If you could post the channel link here. It's on SoundCloud, and it is also on YouTube. If you could just post those links, then they can access these classes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that, Prabhu. Thank you.
Is there any other question or comment?
I don't see
Hare
any.
Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept our respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the Vaishnavas, and all glories to you. Thank you for a wonderful and insightful class, Prabhu. Certainly learned a lot about the mood of a devotee that he should approach. Is that what you are emphasizing, that we should approach the Lord as a friend, as a servant, So what are some of practical tips that you can share with us that will be helpful for those of us who are grihastas? How do we develop this mood? How can we, in our daily lives, how can we make it become part of our routine? And part two of the question is, in certain situations, probably we are faced with certain, if you want to call it like calamities or situations. So how do we approach it in a mood of servitorship? How should because in this day and age, the mind is so quick and impulsive to act and react. How do we untrain ourselves practically and in a devotional way that we can that we can internalize first what somebody is saying to us, and then we can respond in a mood that's befitting and that is in the mode of goodness. Yeah, so that's my questions to you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Let me take the last one first. So how do we react to circumstances that are unpleasant in life? It requires preparation. Because if you notice in the first chapter, the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we notice extraordinary unpleasant circumstances for very dear devotees, amongst whom Krishna is practically having what I would call as, friendly relationship. He's practically present in their midst. and there's a very big calamitous situations, losing the husband, losing the children, losing everything. This is just a very, very calamitous, extreme circumstance that is being described, which the Pandavas have gone through. And then that's the whole description in the first part. Now, how does one process this? We cannot process this overnight, which means it is not an attitude that can just come after a calamity has struck. And the material world is such that it is full of danger, and there's every possibility that we might come in touch with inauspicious circumstances, because that's the nature of this world. However, how do we get prepared for this? What we need to do is we need to develop a culture of dependence, which is what this verse and this chapter is all about. The culture of dependence is also being encouraged by Krishna. He says in 9.22 of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says that I will preserve what you have and I will carry what you lack. I will preserve what you have and I will carry what you lack. What is this meaning? What is the meaning of I'll preserve what you have and I'll carry what you lack? First and foremost, it means that for a devotee at any given time, as of today, he has already given us what is required for us to move forward, and he will already give us, he has already promised us that he will carry whatever is lacking in our lives for us to be able to come closer to him, which means that we don't want to anticipate that there's something wrong with our lives as of today and something else has to happen for us to take up Krishna consciousness more seriously. We've been asked by our acharyas to chant, we've been asked by them to associate, we've been asked by them to come and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, worship the deities, and then have aspiration to come to Dham and spend time in the Dham. So these are 5 activities that are considered to be superlative by our acharyas. So the point is, at any given time, the devotee has already been given what is required for them to be able to execute this particular desire and these orders of the acharyas of being able to associate, chant, read Srimad Bhagavatam, worship the deities, and come to Srimad Dham or Mayapur. The point is that the facility has already been made. We need to accept the fact that at any given day, when we wake up, when times are good, I'm talking about when times are good, on any given day when we wake up, we have to accept the fact that we have already been given what is required for us to go back to Godhead. It has already been given to us. We don't need anything more. We just need to do what's been given to us nicely. Because Krishna is making this promise that I will carry what you lack and I will preserve what you have. So this is the first realization. What does it also mean? It also means that we also need to culture ourselves to accept each and every day as an arrangement of the Lord. And this is to be done when the times are good. Culture ourselves that every day is an arrangement of the Lord. You have arranged today to bring me closer. You have arranged today for me to be a better servant. This acceptance also has to be there, and this meditation has to be there on a daily basis. Because if it is there on a daily basis, when there is a real challenge, then we are already cultured, we are already trained to process the particular challenge in the same channels as being described when times are okay for us. So we need to culture ourselves with that attitude. But where does this all come in terms of the instruction given to us by Mahaprabhu? Where does it come? It comes in the form of the verse of Trinadapi Sunichena Tarori Vasahishnuna Amani Manadena Kirtane Sadahari. What does it mean? It means tolerate the circumstances and be humble. What does it mean? It essentially means that we accept life as if it's an arrangement of the Lord, and we develop the strength to act upon it, which means we execute the important principles of bhakti, even though there are challenges, because in our life we accept it. This is your arrangement, Krishna. You have arranged it. This is humility. Real humility is to accept life as if it's been arranged by the Lord. You have arranged it with all the difficulties that I have, with the economic difficulties, with the relationship difficulties, with the health difficulties, with the challenges that we may have in the overall environment. This is your arrangement, Krishna. For some reason, you have put me here, so I accept it. That is humility. That is Trinadapi Sunichena. That is Tarori Vasahishnuna. Then once we accept it in our hearts and have the confidence that whatever arrangement is being made, it is being made by someone who is loving us, then what does happen is that we get to experience his love even in such circumstances. And we get the ability to move forward quite decisively, even if circumstances are very challenging. So it requires training when the times are good. Then we are able to implement when times are not very good. So it requires a daily culture of how to operate in life. So we need to remember Trinadapi Sunichena means to accept life as given by the Lord and to accept it. It does not mean that we don't act upon things. It doesn't mean we don't make attempts to change things, but we first need to accept things first. Yeah, we need to accept it first, and once we accept it, then we will be receiving the intelligence and the resources for us to make changes so that we could serve better. So this is the answer I have for your second question. If you can kindly remind me, the first question was, how does one culture Dasya Bhakti in an environment of Grahasthashram? The fundamental way is as follows. The fundamental route given by the Acharyas is, one needs to develop love. If one develops love, which is basically developing a deeper understanding of our sambandha with Krishna, which means without sambandha, without understanding what a relationship is Krishna, we can't fall in love. So we are basically training ourselves in sadhana bhakti to develop love so that we become more deeply attuned with a relationship with the Lord through service. And those are the tenets: coming in touch with sadhus who can inspire us, chanting Harinam, Srimad Bhagavatam, deity worship, and aspiring to be on the Dham. As we develop love and develop this identity of being a servant of the Lord, then Abhida, once Sambandha is established more firmly, the extent to which Sambandha is established, there would be love. The extent to which one knows that they have an eternal relationship, to that extent they will have love. And once that is established, then Bhakti flows, which is Abhida. Abhideya follows Sambandha. Then one is able to attain even greater goal of Krishna Prema fully. So the point being that we need to start with, first and foremost, doing what is required from the perspective of sadhana bhakti so that we can re-establish our relationship. So there has to be Krishna Sambandha, and we work towards Krishna Sambandha even in the Grahasthashram by doing the sadhana, coming in touch with different aspects of Krishna, sadhana, sadhu, Srimad Bhagavatam, deity. And then as Sambandha develops, then automatically Abhideya improves. And then we have the ability to become a much better servant and become a much better vessel who carries that love. So service is not possible without surrender. Surrender is not possible without love. And what we are trying to do with our entire process of Krishna consciousness is to ultimately reach that point of being able to love Krishna. So because we love him, we will surrender. And if we surrender, we're going to be proper servants. So I hope this is practical. Practical in the sense that there's a certain mindset, and that mindset is also going to encourage the adoption of sadhana. And then once we do the sadhana properly in that mindset, then we would be given an opportunity for deeper sambandha. Deeper sambandha would invoke deeper emotions and love, and deeper emotions and love would invoke proper service. So that's the connection.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure.
So
there's one question which I just left over, then I'll stop with that. Isn't Lord Vishnu the expansion of Balaram? The answer is yes. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Balaram expands because he is Sevaka Bhagavan. He expands into Mula Sankarshana. He expands into Mahasankarshana. Mahasankarshana expands into the three Purusha avatars, and the three Purusha avatars practically are the origin of most of the avatars. But then there is also the idea of Narayan, who is practically in the Vaikuntha realm, who is the second quadruple expansion. He is also an expansion of Balaram. He is also an expansion of Balaram. So we don't differentiate between Vishnu Tattva and Vishnu and Balaram and Krishna. We are very clear that it is Krishna who expands into Balaram. Balaram expands into the different Purusha avatars, and the Purusha avatars come as avatars. They support the creation, maintenance, and destruction. We don't generally differentiate, but Lord Ramachandra, yes, in that sense, is an expansion of Balaram. But for that matter, everybody is an expansion of Balaram. Krishna practically expands into Balaram, and then Lord Ramachandra is an expansion of Balaram. Absolutely, yes. There's no doubt. But we use this, we say Krishna is an expansion. Krishna is the origin, because the origin of Balaram is Krishna. All right. So, back to you, Santosh Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I don't see any questions. I just have an announcement, 10 seconds, not much, not more than that. So Prabhu has touched upon the verse 18 today, and You know, Queen Kunti's celebrated prayers consist of only 26 verses, and Prabhu has touched upon one. You know, even though we have 26 verses, yet they are considered a philosophical, theological, and literary masterpiece. So I would request you all devotees to join, if you can, for the next 8 weeks or so, to immerse yourself in Kunti Maharani's prayers. And we're also planning something else, which will be shared soon. Thank you for joining in today. Hope to see you again next week. Thank you, Shri Vrindavan Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.